When you hear the word endgames, what is your reaction? Is it this?
Yes, chess training. Endgames? No endgames.
Or this?
No. I can't understand.
Or is it this?
Like Hine versus Yates. No.
Well, if you want to change all those to this,
I solved the puzzle.
then this is the video for you. Here's the truth. Endgames are important. Ever had that feeling of hating a vegetable only to like it when you taste it? Endgames make up 1/3 of a chess game, and almost 22% of all endgames are pawn endgames. Okay, enough with the facts. Let us begin. No, not that let us. My name is Ishan, and today we're gonna look at some pawn endgames. By the way, if you have any confusion with the fancy chess terminology I use in this video, you can check out the whole playlist if you want. Or if you want to specifically learn the terminology, just check out the third video. So, I will share my screen.
One eternity later.
So as you can see on the screen, we have a position with equal material, and as you expect, it's a draw. So I want to show you an example of mined squares. These squares are not to be stepped on, or you will blow up, that is lose the game. Mined squares, blowing up. Makes sense, right? So the mined squares in this position are c4 and b6. So the first one to step on any of these squares loses. So white plays king c3. If white plays king c4, then king b6, and the pawn is lost because white will have to move away. So black wins. After king c3, black will also shuffle around. He will play king b7, and it will continue like that. King d3, king c7, king c3, king d7, king b3, king c7, king a3, king b6, king a4 is a draw. If black were to play king b6 on this move, then white uses the same strategy against him and wins the game with king c4. Notice how both the players are stuck to their squares. White is stuck to a3, b3, c3, d3, and black is stuck on c7, b7 and a7. The reason is, the moment any side loses control of these squares, the other side can safely come up and capture the pawn, which is not what we want. That is why it's a draw, because neither player can think of moving away to capture the pawns on the g file, because then the pawns will immediately fall on the queen side. So let's move on. This position is quite a common one, and I'm pretty sure you must have seen it somewhere or the other. In this position, the mined squares are e6 and c5. So it's white to play. There is a way for him to win. Pause the video and try to find it. The answer is king f6. So what we are doing is, we are avoiding this mined square and moving around it like this, so that black never gets the chance to blow us up. After king f6, black can try either king c7 or king b5. If he plays king b5, then we can play king e7, continuing our plan of attacking the pawn without stepping on e6. And black has an unfortunate decision to make. Either he can let us win the pawn and the game, or he can step onto the mined square, which is the only way to defend the pawn. So black steps king c5 and boom, black is lost. Game over, white wins the pawn. If black were to play king c7 after king f6, then also we can just play king e7 and we win the pawn. So just a simple king and pawn versus king elementary win. This basic concept of moving around the mined square will be quite useful for you in the puzzle and also in the next position. So as you can see here, we have taken the same position, although we have made it black to play. So for those of you who don't know who to play it is, you can see over here the dots color represents the side to move. So it's black right now, so it's black to play. So black, obviously, having watched our first example, will also play king b5. When white has a choice to make, should we play king f6 or should we play king e4? Turns out there is a way for white to draw, which is king e4. If white were to play king f6, then he would lose in a similar fashion as the previous example with king c4, king e6 and king c5. So white should try to defend the king and pawn versus king endgame with king e4. Obviously black can try king c4 and after king e3, king d5, king d3. As we had seen, this position is a draw because the pawn is behind the half line and white has the opposition. When it was white to play, the pawn had already crossed the half line. So we could see that the key squares were not only on the 7th rank but on the 6th rank as well, which was where our king captured the pawn. Moving on. Okay, now there are a lot of pawns, so we need to look at this position in a bit of depth. This game, played between two famous grandmasters, namely Alekhine and Yates, is a great example for mined squares. And obviously, like every position, white to play, pause the video and try to find the answer. There are actually two correct solutions to this, both a different move order but aiming for the same result. For those of you who said king d4, I am afraid you're wrong, because if you had noticed, this was in a way a mined square, because now after king e6, white loses the pawn, and you might say, but after king c5 we are also winning a pawn. Truth be told, it is complicated. It is not a sure draw, but theory says that it's a draw. So let's just look at why. After takes and the entire pawn race, the queens promote, and you will say, but I am a pawn up. Well, in the later videos on queen endgames, we will see that in positions where the attacking side or the better side has a rook pawn extra, it's mostly a draw. So it's better that you find the correct answer rather than struggling here to win. So going back, and after king e6, if you try e4, then he can simply play f4, when after, let's say, king c3, king into e5, king d3, and it's just a draw. As you can see, we have reached the similar type of position where both sides have to keep shuffling and no one can make progress. So that is also a draw. And if you play directly king c3, then also king into e5, king b4, and that entire sequence continues, and we reach the same queen versus queen and pawn. So all these options are a draw. If you play king b4 on the first move, then also we see the same story repeating of queen versus queen and pawn. If you play e4, you're right, because this is also a solution, although in the game Alekhine played king d3. After king d7 by Yates, Alekhine played e4, and obviously you don't want to take it because that would allow white to efficiently use his pawn as a decoy, and he would let black capture the pawn and go for the queenside pawns. So black's only move to stay in the game is f4. When white plays king e2, logically going after the pawn, black plays king e6, and here it is probable that most of you gave up thinking that after king f3 he takes the pawn and we are in zugzwang. In fact, then he would be winning. But the correct move here is, drum roll, king f2, because the f3 square and e5 squares are mined, and as you can see here, black would have a waiting move. If there were no pawn on e5, he could have played king f6 and maintained control of the e5 square, so that whenever we played king f3, he would take on he would play king e5 and we would lose. But that's not the case. Because we have an e5 pawn, black either has to capture it or retreat, and if he retreats, let's say with king e7, then we can just win the pawn. And if he captures, which is exactly what we want, then we put him in zugzwang with king f3. King e6, king f4 is a simple win. And also in e4, after f4, which is his only real try, if he takes, then king d4 wins the pawn. So f4 and again king d3, repeating the same sequence, and this time we win the pawn. So let's move on. Now we have reached the puzzle for this video. The position may look weird for a number of reasons. One, there is a bishop on the board, which is not supposed to be there. It's a pawn endgame video. Two, black is in check. Normally that's not how puzzles work. And three, wait, I don't have a third reason, sorry. Anyway, obviously it's black to play. So the question is, what do you do? I mean, that's a question you ask to yourself on every move. That's not a very specific question. But the question is, what do you do? You are in check and you have 3 moves. Literally 3 moves. Use the elimination method like I taught you in the third video. And it's pretty easy, but I just felt like giving it to you after the many hard puzzles I gave in the initial videos. So good luck with that. I'll tell you the answer in the next video. And please pause the video and try to find it here itself. Don't wait for the next video. Yes, now we move on to the answer of the puzzle given in the 4th video. It is quite a big answer. That's why I left a lot of time for it. So as we had seen, black had played king b7 and it was white to play and find a way to win. So how do we begin? The first thing we need to realize is, in order to win, we need to capture the c6 pawn. And in order to capture the c6 pawn, we need to attack it. So now where do we attack it from? If we try to attack it from b6, you're on a dead end because black is literally sitting there waiting to shoulder you away. So what can you do? We must move around the pawn and attack it from the other side. So to do that, we need to make sure that the black king is as far away as possible. And now I will introduce to you another concept called triangulation, which basically means to lose a move in order to make it the opponent's turn. Let's see how it works. We play the slightly surprising king b3. Not everyone's first intuition is to retreat in these kind of positions. If you play king b4, the problem is after king a6, you have to repeat the position with king a4. Then you'll go back king b7 and we are at the starting point. Because if you try something new with king c4 with the similar idea of just, going around and capturing the pawn, the problem is he has king a5 and he is threatening to come and capture our pawn, which is not a good thing. And if we defend, I mean obviously king b5. So if we defend like this, then king b5 is in fact a very easy draw for him. What can we do? We can play king d4, but the problem is he can just play king b5. And if you have realized, the d4 and b5 squares are also another set of mind squares. So imagine it had been black to play in this position. To get to that, we would have to lose a move, right? But that would be winning. So that is why we waste a move with king b3. Also, instead of king d4, if you try king d3, then he can play king a4. The problem being you have moved away from the pawn, so he has enough time to capture your pawn and draw the game. In fact, he captures both your pawns, because if you play king d6, remember the example we saw, he'll play king b5, your position is lost. So, and if you play king b3, then we just saw king b5. So that doesn't work. King b4 doesn't work. King a5 doesn't work because of king a7. So what do we do? King b3. The point is, after king a6, I mean if you try king c7, then it's very easy. We just move ahead, and the moment you come close to blockading our king, we push a4 with the idea that you have to be in the square of the pawn. Again, if you are confused what that means, go back and check out the third video. So king d7 and king e5, it's a simple win, because now when he moves away, we'll capture the pawn, win the game, go home, have fun. So after king b3, his only real try is king a6. What can we do now? Well, now, like I said, we lose a move. We play king b4. Obviously, we could have done this on the previous move itself. So basically, we just lost a move. And by the way, don't use this concept in middle games. Time matters a lot over there. So after king b4, he has to retreat. So he goes back. And here, a stupid thing to do would be play king a4 and repeat the entire sequence again. So we go king c4, king a6, and now again king d3, avoiding the mind square on d4. So moving around it like this. It is a long path, but trust me, it works, because black has nowhere to go. Black will play king a5. Obviously, he is not that dumb. He'll also avoid the b5 square. But our point is made after this. Now we are simply threatening to go and capture the c6 pawn. And if he goes for capturing a3 with king a4, then the problem is we are much too fast for him, and we win for obvious reasons. If he plays king b5, lo and behold, he has fallen into our trap, and we can just play king d4 and wait for him to resign. Or maybe he'll play along. We reach the same position. Life is good. So that is it for today. I hope you liked this video. Please make sure to like, subscribe and hit the bell icon so I can keep making such content for you. And till then, see you in the next video. Bye.